normal disclosure thing. So, you know, if you don't want to be recorded, just mute yourself, Rosemary. And
yep.
Okay, off you go, Jim.
Yeah, so last week...
do you need to share anything on the screen?
No, I don't need to share anything. Last week, I basically covered part 1 of the housekeeping. This is part 2 of it. This includes how basically setting up email on Windows 10 and essentially how you go about doing that. Now, basically, Windows 10 has in default has now got a default application that built into the OS. They used to be called Metro apps before, or basically modem apps, or basically now they're universal apps, which work with similarly on all devices running the new operating system or running on Windows 10. Now, Windows 10 includes new versions of Mail and Calendar apps, and I would imagine since this since I looked into it, there've probably been further downloads and improvements to the they had version 8.1. I suspect they've probably moved in quite they moved forward since then, had several updates probably since that time. Login this week. Did you get the message from Farouk? Sorry, Phil. He's just sent a message, mail by email. But basically, you probably, like a lot of users, they have multiple mail accounts. You've got Yahoo, you've got Gmail. You may have your service provider's email address as well, whether it be AOL, could be Virgin, etc., BT, etc. Now, to set up Windows 10 Mail app, what you do is you launch the Mail app itself and click the gear icon on the lower left corner and go to Settings, then Accounts. Then you'll see an email to use for your Microsoft account to log in, and you can add account basically. Now that brings up a list of the most popular email services, such as, you've got Outlook.com, of course, you've got Exchange, which is Microsoft generic setups. So you've essentially got then Google, Yahoo Mail, and iCloud. Now these are all, of course, iCloud is Apple. And if you have the Google two-factor authentication, which everyone should be using because it gives you greater safety, you have to wait for your confirmation code. Depends on how you set it up, whether you set that confirmation code up to go to another email address or to your mobile. You'll get a verification code, and then you just enter that, and it then verifies that that machine is authorized to use the particular email for Google. Now, that's really it. That's as simple as it is. In terms of setting up email, it's a very seamless process. Should be relatively straightforward. You can add multiple email addresses. You don't have to have the one. You could have several Gmail accounts, several Yahoo accounts, and that will basically be able to set that up through your Mail app on Microsoft Windows 10. Now, the other thing you have got is a calendar app. Now, if you are familiar with how to use a calendar app, you'll know that you can add stuff on there, like with Phil's meetings. You can add that as an item on your calendar app on there, and essentially that tells you that there's a meeting taking place. You get the reminder telling you that you're due to attend the meeting, and providing you can, that will come up. That will be synchronized to your calendar app. Now, if it's the first time you're using the Windows calendar app, you get a welcome screen. Next, you'll see the email accounts you've set up. So what that means essentially is the email accounts. You can then click the Ready to Go button, and what will happen is, essentially what will happen if you've entered an item on your Gmail account or your Yahoo account, it will basically add those meeting dates to your calendar in the same way it does on other devices, so other OSs like that, like the Apple OS, and then that basically it'll remind you where the meeting is. Now with Phil's case, he sends not only the meeting date, also sends you the link, login, and the link to get in there. So it's very seamless. You just click on it, and it should take you through to the meeting on Zoom. Basically, essentially, that is that. It's as simple as that. Now I want to cover that first because it's pretty straightforward and pretty quick. I'll send the links through to Phil for that. There's quite a few links that can be sent through, so that it's a very seamless process to do that. Interestingly enough, the guy who created Zoom this week came out with the fact that he's sick and tired of Zoom meetings himself. So that actually, I was just reminding me that Phil's done 100+ Zoom meetings, and he himself said, "I'm tired of attending my Zoom meetings myself. It's getting a bit too much, you know." So anyway, that's just a side issue. So yeah. Anyway, let's go on to the next thing I was going to cover. Now, the Gmail covers housekeeping. What am I covering? I've got this loads up. Right, there is another way of doing it. I mean, the way I've gone through it is basically what they called, there's these books called, you know, Dummies Micro, you know, it's like Windows for Dummies or whatever. That's the easiest way of doing it. There is another process. In the old days, you had to enter an IMAP or POP configuration. With Windows 10, that automates the process. Just to answer that question, you don't have to enter all those details, so it makes it a very seamless process. It takes away that part of the process for you. So I will send this one through as well, just in case, you know, anyone wants to have it. But that is a very straightforward process. Right. Sorry, the internet's quite slow at the moment today for some reason. Okay. Last week I covered, one of the things I covered in housekeeping is deleting Windows files and folders to free up disk space. Essentially, I covered that. That's one of the things I covered. I'm just going through my other list. I know I've got bloatware I was going to cover. I'm trying to find that particular slide. Load it up. See if I'm connected to the internet. Which internet I'm connected to. Settings. No, wonder. All right, connect to the right internet might help. Okay. Right. It's fine. Let's go there. Go there. No, we don't want that either. Go here. Go back. Right. I'm going to go through how to clean your Windows. Windows 10 machine. Now, essentially, this is good housekeeping because over a period of time, as I explained last week, what happens is you accumulate a lot of files, delete things. It's like going to, the best way of explaining this is it's like going to a library and going to look for a book, it's not on the right shelf. So you have to hunt around for it. The librarian said, oh, the book's in, we have got it in, but it's not being filed in the right place it's supposed to be filed. So you have to hunt around for it. It's the same way on the hard drive. What will happen is that your hard drive basically have loads of information. It takes longer for it to access the information because it's got so much information on there. And essentially, it's just generally good housekeeping to keep it running optimally and essentially deleting the stuff that you don't need. And I think that the most obvious one to begin with is deleting unused software. There's some, I can't remember the statistic, but there was a stat that came out. Yeah, I was reading through that. People have got so many gigabytes of unused software on their machines that basically takes up valuable hard drive space. And if they were to delete them, they'd free up about, you know, a certain amount of percentage of their of their hard drive space. And I think it's very true. Now, to see all the apps on your computer on Windows 10, you need to click on the Start button, then the Settings, then you click on Apps, and then you click on Apps and Features. Now, on apps, and when you get through to apps and features, you can scroll down the list and then click uninstall anything you don't need. Now, you do need to exercise a air of caution here, because if you just delete willy-nilly and just delete stuff, you're going to have a situation where you know, you're going to delete stuff that you may be important to sort of run other programs. Now, a Google search will generally enable you to do that without you know, to ensure that it's safe to delete. So that shouldn't be a problem so long as you follow that up. So you basically, what you do is you go to Start, Settings, Apps, and then Apps and Features, and then you scroll down a list and click on uninstall anything you haven't used. Now, I'm not sure with Windows 10, with certain, I know with Apple it will tell you last used, you know, 3 months ago or 2017. I think there should be something similar with in Windows 10. I'm not sure if it has that feature, so it'll tell you when you last used it. So essentially, that's what it is. Now, the other thing you can do is you run an antivirus. Now, antivirus should be installed on your computer, because one of the most common things to get basically which causes issues with computers is a virus. Now, the good way of doing that is to do a full scan or a deep scan. Now, a deep scan is the best thing to do, because that will enable you to check on all. It does a thorough check of your system. It takes a long time, but it's well worth it. You should at least run that at least once every couple of weeks. If you can't do that, failing that, you should do a full scan pretty much weekly if you can. Essentially, the deep scan you should do at least once a month, because that enables you to know whether you're running, if you've got anything that's in the background that's running, which shouldn't be there, and if there's a virus there, it will basically delete it. Now,
the difference between a full scan and a deep scan.
A deep scan goes through much more detail than a full scan. A full scan will just go through certain amount of files. It go through your files, but the deep scan will go through every sort of extension for that file. Go through a much more thorough. It's like doing a sort of quick wash and doing a sort of to use a washing machine analogy, and doing another clean, doing like a 30-minute wash, or doing one that's an hour and a half. It does much more of a clean than you would do with a quick wash. Quick wash will get your clothes clean, but anything that's sort of any sort of deep stains or anything, stains you got there won't be got rid of. Whereas if you do a deep wash, you'll get rid of pretty much most of the stuff on your clothes. In a similar way, a full deep scan will go into a lot of detail into, do a thorough check on your machine.
When I'm running a scan on the machine, it's usually via, one of the anti-malware downloads we got, and doesn't specify a difference between. This
is more to do with antivirus, not with malware. Malware's got a different way of doing it. Malware bytes, certainly. Malware bytes will basically do you're running the free version, are you? Or is it, you just run the normal version you've been using for ages?
The free one.
Yeah, I mean, I think the paid for version's got the option to do more of a tweaking with it. But to be honest with what you're running, it's fine. It will just go through malware. Now, that was the next thing I was going to come on to, was it is worth downloading malware bytes, because what malware bytes does that antivirus doesn't do is it basically addresses the issue of adware, Trojans, and spyware. Now, antiviruses do that to a certain extent, but malware bytes is basically just designed to essentially address those issues. So as the name says, malware, anything that because what happens sometimes, I don't know if people have experienced this, but when I used to use Windows, you used to have a situation where you download something, it was like a search bar, and you get a search bar appearing on your Windows 10. That isn't actually a authorized add-on from Windows. It is literally, that's what you call malware. And any searches you do, it would direct you to that particular site for you to do the searches, and you couldn't delete it. You'd have to go through your registry. It was a bit of a nightmare. And that is essentially is an example of malware. And Trojan as well. Trojans are basically things that appear to be what on the surface, but behind the background, they are not what they appear to be at face value, and they will wreak damage to your system in the sense of, you know, it can cause all sorts of havoc in the background. So I would suggest you seriously look at a Malwarebytes type program. But Malwarebytes, I can recommend. I've used it myself in the past. Very good program, does what it says. I think they were one of the earliest companies to come out with malware software that I can remember. They've been around for a good few years now. So yeah, I mean, I'm not saying you need to necessarily go with them, but it's something that you could look into. Now, the next thing Windows 10 offers you is something called Disk Cleanup Utility. And it's been a part of the Windows repertoire for a number of years, numerous years actually, and it's still as effective as it was when it first came out, or probably more so. Now, to run Disk Cleanup, you can either type the app's name in the Start menu, or you go to Control Panel, then Administrative Tools, and then Disk Cleanup. Before running the scan, click Clean Up System Files. And what that will do is it allows the machine to run a more thorough scan by checking for old Windows Update files and log files. So what you do is you go to Control Panel, Administrative Tools, and Disk Cleanup. Now, generally speaking, when the scan is complete, you can delete all the files the scan finds. So it will find the files for you, and you can delete them. There could be old Windows files, etc. You need to mark the checkbox next to each of the results it finds, and then click OK. And now, bear in mind, there's a caveat to this, and the caveat is this. If you, when you're choosing to do your cleanup, you click on previous window installations using the clean system files option, you then will not be able to roll back to the previous Windows version anymore. So if you wanted to omit that from your cleanup, then don't check it. So it will say previous Windows installation or something along those lines. If you wanted to roll back, then I would suggest you don't check it. But other than that, you're pretty safe to basically go with the results it finds. Now, the other thing you can do is something called defragmentation. Now, a lot of people have heard of defragmentation, but they don't necessarily use it. Again, to use the analogy I used earlier with respect to, you know, having loads of files on your hard drive, this is very similar. If you have if you have got a lot of fragmentation on your hard drive, essentially means your information is scattered all over the hard drive and not in any particular order. So when the hard drive has to search for the information, it takes longer. Now, with the advent of solid-state drives and people using more solid-state drives than they were before, and as they become more and more common, as the prices come down, given the price of memory at the moment, the way things are going in the IT sector, it doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon. But because we've got a worldwide memory shortage at the moment. But and I think with the solid-state drives, they've kind of plateaued at a certain price. But when the prices do become more accessible for everyone, then solid-state drives run a bit more differently. There's not necessarily the same degree of problems. But with the old hard drives or the hybrid drives, which are sort of what people are using, essentially it is a good idea to have defragmentation. In fact, it's a good idea to run it regardless of what you're running. Now, you can find the defragment and optimize drives tool by running a search or by going to Control Panel, then Administrative Tools. To use the app, you then highlight the primary hard drive. So if it's C drive, or if it's got a name on it, like Chewy Backup or whatever it is, you click you highlight your primary hard drive and click Optimize in the lower right-hand corner of the window. Now, what that will do is it'll optimize your hard drive. It will defragment it, clean it up, so make sure it's running optimally. And that, I think, is a very useful thing to have. So it just basically makes sure everything's done nicely and it's all running properly. Now, the other thing you can do, I think this kind of ties into the earlier point about sort of, cleaning up your hard drive. It's basically what happens with Windows is it retains your old drivers. Now, what a driver is essentially is the interface between you and your device. So, for example, if you're running a printer, which a lot of people do, you update the latest version of the driver, which is what enables you to use it on the operating system. and that driver that you've updated from to remains on the hard drive. So the old hard drive, the old drive will remain on the hard drive. Now, certain software has an automated process. I can't remember. I believe, certain like Shockwave and some of the other ones, Adobe, they would uninstall. They used to give the option to uninstall your old one and reinstall the new one. Not all of them do that. So what happens is, you essentially will have a how to do that. Essentially, what you do is how to remove the old drivers is you essentially what will happen is you need to go to old device driver packages on your disk cleanup utility that I just referred you to, and it'll give you the amount of hard drive space that particular all the drivers are taking up, essentially. Now, if you click on it, you can then basically clean that up. Now, to be honest with you, what I can do is I can send you the link for this, because it follows into essentially what I was saying earlier. It isn't a difficult thing to do, but essentially what will happen is that if you keep the old version, and you put multiple devices on there, if you've got various cameras and stuff, the logic of having the old drivers is that if you have a problem with a new driver, it enables you to roll back to the old driver, so you've got it as a backup. However, if you are constantly updating your drivers, which Windows tends to do because you've got devices which are going to use Windows and they do updates for them, the manufacturer will do an update to take account for it. Especially with Apple, it's more the case. They'll come out with a new OS and you have to update the driver on it. But it's the same case with Windows. They do take up space, and you can find that some of them take up 300-400 meg. Yeah, and depending on how much hard drive space you've got. I know on my hard drive, for example, I've got 550. I've got an SSD drive on my machine, and I've got 550 GB. Now, I tend to run at about a third of the capacity in terms of basically having a third of capacity occupied, or maximum of half, no more than. Because to be honest with you, I don't see the point of having any more than that on the basis that it's just going to use up more and more hard drive space. I then tend to either delete or offload it onto external hard drive. Now, what you do is to get started, you need to pay the Windows key plus R to open run. And then you input clean MGR, all one word, and click OK. And then you need to select your main system drive from the drop-down menu and click OK. And this cleanup will then open, and then you click clean up system files, and you might need to select your system drive again. What will happen is this will bring up a window containing a list of things you can delete to save system space. You can feel free to tick other items along there, but the pertinent one for us is device driver packages. Once selected, click OK, and it will delete your older driver version. So you'll only have the current driver versions on there. Don't worry, it's not going to delete your current drivers and the old drivers. It's going to delete the old drivers. Now, that's a very handy thing to have. If you had your system for a long time and you've never done this, you're likely going to have numerous drivers on the system. You'll be surprised about how much hard drive space you can free up. So, if people are running low on hard drive space and they're thinking, well, what am I supposed to do? I've got loads of stuff. That is a very good option. I think it's a good thing to do anyway. Now, there are things you can do to reveal hidden drivers, but I'm not going to go through them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send this link to you. And if you have any questions about removing hidden drivers, if anyone suddenly feels a urge to discuss that, I'm happy to do that later. But this essentially gives you an overview of how to delete your old drivers. Of course, I'm going to send a link to yourselves for that. So I'll do that. That's not a problem. I'll send that to Phil. I've got a number of things I need to send through anyway. Right. What else? What time? What we've done for time? It's 10 past. Got plenty of time. Okay. What else have I got to cover?
There's a few things from last week you're going to send over as well, aren't there? So
yeah, they're all going to be sent. All the
get them
links.
together and email them over.
Yeah, I'm just going to email the links through. I'll send them by email. Pretty much everything I'm covering now is going to be sent through. There's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9. There's 12 links, I think, at the moment. So essentially, you've got 12 links. Just
put a sentence of description or something for each one, so because people will get lost if there's 12 of them in a row.
Yeah, I'll do that. So I'm going to go through something called bloatware now, and as the name suggests, bloatware is literally that, is bloatware. Because what will happen is bloatware is basically technology companies will fill your machine with things that they've done deals with other companies in order to you. So these are things that are already pre-installed on your hard drive, essentially, unless you're doing a complete new drive installation yourself and you're buying a machine without anything on there, without an operating system, you're installing it yourself, which very few people do. Well, people don't generally do that. I won't say very few people. I said not many people would do it unless they actually have knowledge of how to install software. And they wanted to go through all of that, and unless they're sort of confident in doing so, they wouldn't do it, because they want to just basically plug the machine in and play with it, plug and play. Now, they will sell you a shiny laptop, a phone, tablet, pre-installed applications, put extra $1 in their pocket that basically do deals with other companies to do that. And often what happens, you've got bundles of often useless programs just taking up this already limited storage space. Now, this is very much the case in the earlier days with mobile phones, for example. You'd have an Apple iPhone which has got 32 gigabytes of memory, and by the time when you sort of fire it up, you've only got 16 gig to play with, and you're looking, thinking, what the hell, 16 gigs been taken up by what exactly? Now with most manufacturers, I think the minimum they put is 64 GB. I think some of them are moving to 128 GB, but still you don't want to be taking up a lot of space with bloatware. Microsoft is probably not as bad as some of the other manufacturers, but they're no strangers to bloatware. But they're, on the face of it, prima facie, it looks really good, really kind of easy to use, seamless. But behind the scenes, what happens is a load of programs that you just don't need, really. But luckily, you can rid yourself of the bloatware. Essentially, Windows 10 does come with a rather large amount of it. Now, bloatware doesn't. The thing is about bloatware, it doesn't feature within the system's apps and features list you would normally use on that sort of program, because there's no reason for it to appear there. Because what happens is Microsoft and their partners, manufacturers who deliver products with bloatware, tend to profit, so they don't want you to easily find them. So essentially, bearing that in mind, some of the Windows 10 bloatware is easier to remove than others. Using a regular uninstall, this appears to work with several apps, including Windows 10 installation, such as Money, News, Sports, and a few other things that are clogging up your start menu. So essentially, what you do is you find the application you want to remove, you right-click, and then click uninstall. It's literally as simple as that. So, essentially, you've got something called PowerShell. Now, PowerShell is, I think when Windows PowerShell essentially is, you need to run that as administrator, select run as administrator, which enables you to ensure you have control over the entire system. Now, I'm not going to necessarily go through that, because it's a bit more of you have to know quite a bit about what you're doing in terms of using PowerShell to actually remove certain things. So you can also uninstall, for example, Windows bloatware with something called Deployment Imaging Service and Management. It's a relatively powerful tool and can easily be used by service of Windows system in many different ways. So essentially, these all work from the command prompts. So you'd have to enter various, for example, that particular one. I'm going to send a link for this again. What I'll do is I'll send you the link, and then you can have a look through it. If we need me to go through this, I can do a session on it. But generally speaking, what I've referred you to earlier, which is to do the disk cleanup and defragmentation, should clear up quite a bit of space initially. If you need to do this because you want to remove bloatware, then really that's something I can cover. But I think with the housekeeping tips that I've told you about earlier, the tools that are at your disposal, that should clear up quite a lot of it. Now, if you want to still clear the bloatware from your system, like sports, etc., so you can do it. And this is the way in which you do it. Now, there are things that are recommended that you remove, uninstall from. Some things you can't remove from Windows 10, like Cortana. These cannot be removed from your operating system, and they can't be 100% removed from your system, basically. So I mean, the only time you can avoid bloatware is if you're installing Windows 10 yourself, and there's a way in which you can configure it to actually not install certain things. However, if you're buying a machine with it pre-installed, the likelihood of avoiding it is not going to really be possible. So effectively, if you want to review on your installed programs, the easiest way to do that is to click on apps and features section, and here you will be able to see everything that's installed on your PC. So you go to settings, then apps and features, and the apps and features section here will give you a list of everything that's installed on your machine. It's a good idea to actually take a screenshot of that if you can, or take a picture with your mobile phone, so you know that these are the programs that you've got installed on your on your actual machine. So effectively, one of the things that Windows 10 comes with is something called Quicktime. People who've used Apple will be familiar with it. Quicktime is Apple's videos player, and while it's still a current program with Mac users, such as myself, it doesn't actually have any support from Microsoft since 2018. Basically, shortly after Apple announced the depreciation of Windows, or Quicktime for Windows, it effectively, because it hasn't had any updates since 2018, it's got a set of vulnerabilities, which means it can open you up to all sorts of issues. So if you're running Quicktime, you can use something called Ccleaner, which used to be used basically. That used to be I remember using Ccleaner myself, but it basically went downhill when Avast actually purchased the company, and it's not really been the same since. So I mean, really, these things: Adobe Flash Player, Shockwave, Java. So I mean, I'm going to send this link to you because this will give you an overview of what effectively you might have on your system, and you may want to actually uninstall. Now, has anyone got any questions? Any questions so far? We've got 10 minutes left. If you've got any questions about it, I'm happy to go through anything.
No, you keep saying I'll send you a link, show you what you're looking at. It might be easier to show that on screen.
No, because basically what I'm going to do is I wasn't going to cover this, but I went into a lot more detail with regards to unnecessary programs. This just follows in from the housekeeping. The disk cleanup that I talked about earlier essentially should be the first port of call to maintaining your system. If you wanted to uninstall programs, then essentially that's something that you could do. When you do a disk cleanup, it'll give you a list of, and what I went through earlier gives you a list of all the stuff that's on your system, and you can just click on checkbox, tick it, and then essentially it will delete it. The uninstall.
Well, I've done it several times myself, so yeah. It's not a difficult thing to do. But when you're saying, you show us a link of.
So I've got screenshots of how to do that. So I'll send the screenshots. So can you how are you going to put the screenshots on? Can you put screenshots on the on the, or do you just have a link on it, or how would you do it on screen?
Can save them as a JPEG and display them that way.
All right, okay, that's fine. So I'll send
them as PDFs because I won't be able to do that. Well, I'll have to
convert them, or
yeah,
I'll do that later. But I mean, what else have I got to cover? I think I've got some. I mean, see if there's how this is straightforward. Right. Okay. I'm going to go through something called how to hidden windows and caches and how to clear them. Hang on. Let's have a look. No, I won't go through because I haven't got full information on that.
So,
no. Yeah. Go on, Phil.
I was just asking if you got any questions.
Yeah.
Anything so far?
No, I don't know enough to have questions.
Okay, that's that one. Yeah, I mean, I think
this clearing cache you're going to go through now, then, is it?
Yeah, I was going to see if I can go through that. See, I'm just seeing how much detail there is in there. So if I go through it, and
because it's surprising how many people don't know how to do that.
Okay, so I mean, generally speaking, with cache, this is quite an old. This article really refers to hard drives that are, if you've got 100 GB hard, everyone's got more than 100 GB of hard drive space now. So I mean, do you need to know how to remove it? Yes, you could come in handy. However, essentially, you've got to be careful with cache files because essentially they are important because they boost your system performance, but they take up valuable space. Now, as I referred to, I've got an SSD drive, and with an SSD drive, because they're limited capacity, I think when I first got my first one, it was 256 GB, and you'd be surprised how quickly that can be used. I've got double that now. So in most cases, cache files can be removed to clear up disk space. Now, essentially, Windows keeps a cache of all Windows update files, which can come in handy when you need to reapply an update. So I don't know if you go when Windows does an update, it goes. You basically have critical updates, and you have numerous updates that are updated. If you do them automatically, it does it in the background, so you won't even know. However, whilst the update is great, you can use up to 24 GB of cache space. It doesn't automatically clear itself. So in order to do that, you need to go to the Start menu, launch the command prompt app, and type net space stop place WASERV. And then you need to open Windows File Explorer and navigate to C/Windows. Hang on a minute, let me use the chat function on here. I can find it. Where is it?
Down the bottom, taskbar in the middle.
No, I haven't got that. Hang on, let me just go view for your chat. There we are. Okay. Let's go. So you need to basically go to Start menu. Then launch. Yeah. And then type net space stop space WUA Okay. Then next you need to go hang on, that's not right, is it? Okay. And then you update it. Net space start space WU AU SERV. Okay. So basically, that's how you would do the how you would do it. Now, that's I'm going to send a link for that. So that's how that's the process of doing that. So command prompt is what you click on that command prompt, and essentially you enter the net space. So the spaces between the net and start and WA service is what you basically you type in net and space, then start and space again, and then WAU SERV. Now, what will happen is, that should clear the sort of cache of information you have on the hard drive. Now, there is a way. There are also something called temp cache files, temporary file cache, which by the name should be temporary, which means they only held by the program for a little while. Not all programs and processes are good at cleaning the temporary files cache, but you can use this cleanup. This article then goes into this cleanup. So a lot of the stuff that you're going to be able to do should be able to be cleared up with this cleanup, which is built into Windows, because it's a very useful utility to have. And it's really kind of improved as the years have gone on. So it tells you on that, so this cleanup for the system C, for example, clean up system files. So that will enable you to clean up your system files and hopefully clear up space. However, what I've gone through now then further extends that, so you can download, you can uninstall other caches of files which are on the system. So anyway, got any questions on that, or are you okay? Because I'm gonna send a link for it. But to be honest with you, I think that this cleanup really is, from what I've read on it, that this cleanup is really the way to go initially. If you then have further problems, then that's when you start getting into bloatware and deleting that and what have you. But generally speaking, with the bloatware and stuff, it comes pre-installed. So it's not something you have any control over unless you're installing a fresh installation of Windows. Now, I did discuss with Phil a couple of weeks ago that I'm going to do a session, maybe not next week, but a session on installing Windows 10, because I think Phil said that he'd find that useful. And that's something that we can do, go through an installation of how to do Windows 10. It's useful to know. I'm going to be doing it myself at some stage, so it would be useful to have that information. You happy with that, Phil? Or?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, we need to run through that at some point.
Yeah, so I think people need to know how to install Windows 10.
Yeah, the clearing cache, I mean, I've just generally used the cleanup.
Yeah.
Work fine, but this is, what does this give you in on top of that, in addition to that?
So this basically just goes through all your cache, basically. Goes through, it's like we're doing when I refer to the, full scan and the deep scan. So this literally is like, I suppose, your deep scan of your cache files. It just goes through everything, and anything that's not necessary just clears them off the system. However, this really sort of was done in the days when you had a very sort of small hard drive space. I mean, yeah, I would say that for most people, this cleanup should be sufficient to clear up their information. But because you've got some of the options. For example, like I said, you've got the cleanup system files option on the disk cleanup system C. I mean, there are programs you can buy to actually automate the process, but to be honest with you, the disk cleanup is by far the easiest thing to use in cleaning up your hard drive. If you needed to use a more thorough tool, then that's the option you've got there. That basically gives you a lot more sort of it goes into a lot more sort of minutiae of the system and clear up the cache and what have you. But really, if you get to that stage where you're finding that you shouldn't really have to got to that stage, because if you're doing all your housekeeping on top of it, then you should really be able to optimize what you're using on the system, essentially.
I know some people, never clear the cache out, and it's just.
Oh yeah, I know. I mean, it's like people going to, when I used to go to the Apple store for problems, they'd say, "Oh, I thought the machine updates itself and it backs itself up and makes a cup of coffee at the end of the day." So it doesn't. You have to basically do. You have to do the stuff to back it up. I mean, it's amazing how many people don't back up their data, and then when the machine goes faulty, they say, "I've got really important stuff on there, and I haven't actually been able to, I can't lose it." And that's basically what happens in a nutshell, really. Yeah. But yeah.
Right.
Okay. That's all right.
Yeah.
I'll let you know about next week's session. I think I can't remember what it was originally. I'll have a look on that. I'll speak to Diane about that because she's got the look on my list. But yeah, I'll see you everyone next week.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, send us over so I can put it up on the website.
Yeah, I'll get all those files off
this week. So I hope to see you Tuesday, Wednesday, or so.
No worries. Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks a lot. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye.